Round 4. Vinnare via submission. Stor applåd! Khamzat!
Man, give me the belt!
Khamzat Chimaev has become the kind of name that makes even UFC veterans pause before they speak. He's not just winning fights, he's tearing through opponents in ways that look unfair, as if the rules of weight classes, skill gaps, and strategy don't apply to him. In an era where most fighters climb carefully, testing themselves step by step, Chimaev sprints into the cage like a man possessed, smashing through names that were supposed to be roadblocks and turning them into highlight reels. But here's the part that should make everyone sit up. It's not just the fans saying he's different, it's the legends, the fighters who built this sport, the ones who know what true greatness looks like, who are openly admitting they've never seen anything quite like Chimaev. Demetrius Johnson calls his technique flawless. Henry Cejudo shakes his head and says he's on another level. Jon Jones, the most dominant champion in UFC history, respects the way Chimaev approaches the game. Michael Page, a striker who thrives on chaos, just calls him an animal. When different fighters from different eras, different styles, and different weight classes are all saying the same thing, it's no longer hype, it's a warning. Chimaev isn't just here to compete, he's here to take everything. You can tell a lot about a fighter by how their peers talk about them. And when it comes to Khamzat Chimaev, the voices that matter most, the legends of the game, don't sound casual, they sound impressed. Demetrius Johnson, one of the most technically perfect fighters to ever set foot in the octagon, watched Chimaev's submission of Robert Whittaker and broke it down in real time. He wasn't exaggerating. He called the pressure flawless, the control flawless. For a man who made a career out of never making mistakes, those words carry weight. Henry Cejudo, the Olympic gold medalist and two-division UFC champ, didn't even bother sugarcoating it. On his podcast, he just shook his head and laughed. This guy's on another level. Coming from someone who's shared the cage with killers, that's not hype, it's recognition. Then there's Jon Jones, the greatest to ever do it. When Chimaev called him the scariest fighter alive, Jones didn't dismiss him. He didn't brush it off. He said it meant something. That's respect. Champion to champion. Predator to predator. And Michael "Venom" Page, a man who thrives in chaos, described Chimaev with just 2 words: absolute animal. No breakdown, no overthinking, just a raw reaction from someone who's seen fighters up close for years. Different legends, different eras, different styles, and yet every one of them points to the same truth. Chimaev isn't just good, he's frighteningly good. The kind of good that makes veterans sit back, shake their heads, and admit they're watching something rare.
Out of it, he shoots again, and then he takes his fucking lead arm. He takes this lead arm right here. Back at it real quick.
When legends are calling you flawless, fans want to know if the proof is on tape. With Chimaev, the evidence is undeniable. Start with Robert Whittaker, a former middleweight champion, a man who went the distance with Israel Adesanya, known for his toughness and composure. Chimaev didn't just beat him, he folded him in under 4 minutes. 1 takedown, total control, and a neck crank so vicious Whittaker had no choice but to tap. The commentary team could barely process it. That wasn't supposed to happen to someone like Whittaker. Then there was UFC 319 against Dricus du Plessis. This was billed as Chimaev's biggest test, an iron-willed champion with knockout power and insane durability. What happened? 12 takedowns. More than 500 strikes landed compared to just 45 from du Plessis. 21 minutes of ground control, second most in UFC history. And the scariest part? Chimaev didn't slow down once. For years, critics claimed his biggest weakness was cardio, that if you survived the early storm, the wolf would tire out. Against du Plessis, he buried that narrative. Round after round, the pressure stayed the same. He never stopped walking forward, never stopped chaining takedowns, never gave du Plessis a second to breathe. These weren't flukes. These weren't lucky punches. These were dominant, one-sided performances against elite fighters. And when you see stats that look more like sparring drills than championship fights, you realize why legends are calling him one of a kind. This isn't potential anymore. This is Khamzat Chimaev, proving he's the kind of nightmare every fighter dreads to see standing across the cage.
Oh, man. Let's go.
That patented look in his eye. Khamzat Chimaev
If you want to understand why legends and fans are calling Khamzat Chimaev different, you have to look closer at his style. On the surface, it's simple: relentless wrestling, brutal pressure, suffocating control. But the details tell the real story, details that separate him from everyone else. His striking isn't flashy, but it's functional. A stiff jab that sets up takedowns, an overhand right he throws like a hammer, always designed to push opponents backward. He doesn't need to win the striking exchanges clean. He just needs to create enough chaos to close the distance. Once he does, the fight changes instantly. That's where the grappling comes in. Unlike most wrestlers who shoot 1 or 2 takedowns at a time, Chimaev chains them endlessly. Stuff a double leg, he switches to a body lock. Break free, he trips your ankle. Even when you think you've defended the shot, he's already transitioning to the next attack. Whenever there's space, hammering. Then there are the submissions. The Darcy choke, the guillotine, the face crank against Whitaker. He doesn't hunt subs the way a jiu-jitsu specialist would, but he attacks when you're already drowning, when your arms and lungs are too tired to fight him off. That's why they land. That's why they look so brutal. Fans love to compare him to Khabib Nurmagomedov, but the truth is, Chimaev fights meaner. Where Khabib smothered and suffocated, Chimaev mauls. He takes risks, he throws with more violence, and he's far more willing to walk through fire just to drag you back into deep water. It's pressure with an edge, calculated but ruthless. This is why it's the deadliest kind of perfection. To really understand why Khamzat Chimaev can overwhelm elite fighters, you need to look at where it all started. Long before the UFC spotlight, he was grinding it out on wrestling mats in Sweden, stacking national titles. 3-time national champion, known for winning entire tournaments while barely giving up a single point. That foundation became the spine of his fighting style. Takedowns that never stop, control that feels impossible to shake, and transitions that flow like second nature. But it isn't just his wrestling background that makes him so dangerous. It's the way he built on it. Most wrestlers rely on their base. Chimaev turned it into something more by mixing in striking, ground and pound, and submissions. He doesn't just hold opponents down, he breaks them down piece by piece until they run out of answers. Behind all of it is an unmatched work ethic. Training partners tell the same story. He never eases up. It's not unusual for him to train 5 times in a single day. Hard sparring in the morning, grappling rounds in the afternoon, conditioning at night. Darren Till once joked that Chimaev never takes a day off, but he wasn't really joking. His coaches have even admitted they sometimes need to pull him back so he doesn't overwork himself. That constant grind explains why he never looks tired in the octagon. While other fighters pace themselves for 3 or 5 rounds, Chimaev lives in that pace every single day in the gym. That's why when the cage door shuts, he doesn't just outskill his opponents, he outlasts them. For Chimaev, wrestling wasn't just the beginning. It was the foundation for a style that's now evolved into one of the most complete weapons in the UFC.
Very intelligent.
Changes levels and looks for that takedown again and got the 2 hands clasped, goes side. He's going to run over to his corner.
Oh, he went full lock. Beautiful.
What separates the great fighters from the truly unforgettable ones isn't just skill, it's presence. Some athletes carry an aura that changes the fight before a punch is even thrown. Khamzat Chimaev is one of those fighters. He calls himself Boars, the Wolf. It isn't just a nickname, it's a way of life. He speaks about fighting the way others speak about breathing, natural, necessary, something that defines who he is. That single-minded identity bleeds into every stare-down, every walk to the octagon. Opponents talk about how different it feels to stand across from him, not just because of what he can do, but because of the way he carries himself. Calm, focused, but with that edge that suggests he's already picturing how he'll break you down. Even legends recognize it. John Jones said he respects Chimaev's approach because it's built on more than technique. It's built on intent. The same intent Mike Tyson carried when opponents looked beaten before the first bell. The same aura Anderson Silva projected when he'd step into the cage and make even elite fighters hesitate. The same confidence Khabib carried when everyone knew what was coming and still couldn't stop it. What makes Chimaev unique is how he mixes that aura with action. Some fighters talk big but crumble under pressure. Others stay silent but don't deliver. Chimaev does both. He speaks like a man who knows the outcome, then fights like someone determined to prove it. That kind of self-belief is contagious for fans, terrifying for opponents, and rare in any sport. In a game where psychology is half the battle, Chimaev already has a weapon that can't be trained. He makes opponents doubt themselves before the fight even begins.
Hey, guess out. Only 1 minute, last minute. A guy strong couldn't finish that, boy. Sorry, guys. Happy always.
When fighters who've lived through wars inside the octagon talk about Khamzat Chimaev, the tone shifts. It isn't just hype, it's analysis. They break down what makes him so hard to deal with, and the picture that emerges is brutal. One legend points out the way he chains takedowns together. Most wrestlers commit to 1, maybe 2 attempts before resetting. Chimaev doesn't stop. If the double leg doesn't land, he's instantly on a body lock. If you wriggle free, he's sweeping the ankle. Even when you think you've defended, you're already in the middle of the next attack. To the veterans, that's the sign of a fighter who understands pressure at a different level. Another fighter highlights his cage control. He doesn't waste big steps or flashy movement. Instead, his footwork is small, efficient, designed to cut off angles before you even realize you're cornered. Every escape route closes, and suddenly the cage feels smaller than it ever has before. Then there's his mindset mid-fight. He doesn't respect distance, one veteran observed, and that's the scariest part. Chimaev walks through strikes to get his hands on you, trusting his chin, his timing, and his grappling. That relentless disregard isn't reckless, it's calculated. He knows once he touches you, the fight is shifting his way. These insights from seasoned eyes explain why opponents look overwhelmed so quickly. It's not just the physical force, it's the constant, layered attack that feels like it has no end. And when legends nod their heads at that kind of detail, you know it's not hype, it's real.
What was Chimaev like? Was he different? Was he special?
You build him up in your head, then you get in there and you go, that wasn't special. There was nothing different.
Every once in a while, a fighter comes along who makes people wonder if the sport is shifting around them. Georges St-Pierre did it with technique and discipline. Khabib Nurmagomedov did it with pressure and control. Anderson Silva did it with artistry. Mike Tyson did it with intimidation. And now, Khamzat Chimaev is starting to look like he belongs in that same conversation. Consider the speed of his rise. GSP climbed carefully, developing through each fight before becoming champion. Khabib took years of grinding through the lightweight division before finally earning his title shot. Even Jon Jones, as meteoric as his rise was, needed a few years to fully establish his dominance. Chimaev, he went from prospect to middleweight champion in what feels like a blink. The pace of his ascent is one of the fastest we've seen in modern UFC history. Then there's his versatility. Most fighters dominate in one lane before expanding their arsenal. GSP built on his karate base with wrestling. Khabib leaned on sambo. Usman was a wrestler who developed striking. Chimaev, however, arrived with a toolkit that looked nearly complete. Wrestling that smothers, striking heavy enough to set up finishes, and submissions sharp enough to end fights quickly. It's not that he's evolving. It's that he showed up already evolved. And when people mention the idea of champ or even triple champ ambitions, that's not just marketing talk. Few fighters in UFC history have had the style to realistically threaten across multiple weight divisions. But with Chimaev, legends and fans alike are beginning to ask, is this the rare athlete who might actually do it? That's why the comparisons matter. He's not just a dominant fighter in the present, he's the kind of fighter who makes people think about history and whether we're watching the early chapters of a career that might one day redefine greatness in the UFC.
I'll do it.
You're too little, but you have to go to other divisions. Maybe like, I don't know.
The UFC isn't just fought in the cage, it's fought in the comments section, on podcasts, in gym talk. And when it comes to Khamzat Chimaev, the buzz is louder than almost anyone else in the sport right now. Fans split into two camps almost immediately. On one side are the believers, pointing to his dominance over Whittaker and Duplessis as proof that the middleweight division already belongs to him. They call him Boars, the Wolf, posting memes of him hunting opponents like prey. To them, every fight is less about if he'll win and more about how quickly he'll do it. But then there's the other side. Critics argue that Chimaev's style is too one-dimensional, too wrestling-heavy. Paulo Costa has mocked his approach, claiming he smothers fights instead of entertaining. Some fans echo that sentiment, saying smash and control isn't as fun to watch as striking battles. Others raise the cardio question, pointing to moments in his earlier fights where he looked winded, even if those doubts were silenced against du Plessis. Interestingly, many fighters in the division seem hesitant to call him out directly. While most UFC contenders are quick to throw their name into the spotlight, some appear to prefer other matchups when Chimaev's name comes up. That silence speaks volumes. It's easier to call for a fight with Adesanya, Strickland, or Pereira than to volunteer for 20 minutes under Chimaev's weight. Internationally, the fan culture around him tells another story. In Russia and Sweden, he's celebrated as a hero, a warrior who represents grit and discipline. In the US, the reception is more divided. Some admire the dominance, others dismiss it as boring or untested. But love him or hate him, everyone is talking. And that's the key. Controversy fuels stars. Whether fans cheer him or boo him, they tune in. And the more Chimaev wins, the harder it becomes to argue with the results. Right now, the conversation isn't just about if he's elite. It's about how long it will take before no one can deny he's the most dangerous man in the division. Chimaev isn't the type to sit back and enjoy a belt. Even before the dust settled after his championship win, UFC President Dana White made it clear the UFC wants him back in action quickly. The reason is simple. Dominant champions keep divisions alive, and right now, the middleweight division revolves around how long Chimaev plans to stay on top. What's fascinating is the way Chimaev talks about his goals. While some champions carefully map out one defense at a time, he speaks in bigger terms. If God wants, I'll be double champ, maybe triple champ. He's said more than once. That's not bravado, it's conviction. He genuinely sees no ceiling for himself, no weight class too far out of reach. The immediate question, though, is who dares to step up first? Contenders like Sean Strickland, Paulo Costa, and even Israel Adesanya linger in the mix, but none of them look particularly eager. Strickland's toughness makes him durable, but can he survive the wrestling storm? Costa has power, but his ground defense has struggled in the past. Adesanya, the former king, might be the most intriguing matchup stylistically, but his recent losses have dimmed the aura he once had. Behind the matchmaking debates, one truth keeps echoing among fighters and analysts. If Chimaev gets you to the ground, the fight is essentially over. That's not marketing, it's reality. Whitaker felt it, du Plessis felt it, and every contender watching knows the risk of signing that contract. For Chimaev, though, it's not just about defending a title. It's about proving that this belt is only the beginning of a much bigger run.
Khamzat Chimaev showcasing all his skills so far this evening. Everyone thought this might be a stand-up war, and he's shown that he's a true martial artist, well-rounded mixed martial artist, putting on a performance.
If Khamzat Chimaev defends his middleweight crown, the horizon opens into something far bigger than just one division. The obvious super fight is Israel Adesanya, a clash of styles between Adesanya's striking artistry and Chimaev's relentless grappling. It's the kind of fight that would headline a stadium and decide not just a belt, but bragging rights over two different visions of dominance. Then there's Alex Pereira. Already a two-division champion, Pereira carries nuclear knockout power, and a fight with Chimaev would be a collision between raw striking and unstoppable wrestling. It's the kind of matchup that could shape highlight reels for years. But Chimaev's ambitions don't stop there. He's already talked about moving to light heavyweight, and the idea of him testing himself against bigger names isn't far-fetched. The UFC has rarely seen fighters who look capable of conquering three divisions, but Chimaev carries that aura. What's clear is this: every time he wins, the questions get louder. Not can he defend, but how high can he climb? If he clears middleweight, takes a second belt, and maybe even steps into a third division, the conversation shifts entirely, from contender to all-time great. Khamzat Chimaev isn't just another rising star. He's the storm the UFC can't ignore. Legends call him flawless, fans can't stop debating him, and contenders hesitate when his name comes up. From Whitaker to du Plessis, from hype to history, Chimaev has proven he's more than potential. He's a force rewriting what dominance looks like. The question isn't if he's good enough, it's who, if anyone, can stop him. So what do you think? Can anyone slow down Boars? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like, and subscribe for more fight breakdowns.